Cybertron was my introduction to the franchise, and it will always hold a special place in my heart for that. So imagine my excitement when it was announced that not only would Transformers Legacy feature Cybertron characters, but would get an entire Walmart-exclusive capsule subline homaging the Speedia 500 arc. And headlining that series was a brand new toy of Velocitron's long-reigning champion, Override. Override transforms into a Velocitronian race car that is very reminiscent of her original design from Cybertron. I've always liked the aesthetic of this vehicle. The smooth curves of the front end converging to 3 sharp points give it a very unique look, but it still looks like it could reach some serious speeds. It's very Speed Racer-esque, which I hear is no coincidence. The partially exposed head is a bit odd, though. On the one hand, I get that this is an alien vehicle mode meant for mobility rather than disguise, but on the other hand, I feel like that would cause a lot of unnecessary drag. Regardless, it's still a very cool looking car mode. It even has the transparent tires, which were something of a trademark feature for Velocitronian characters in Cybertron. It's not an exact match to the original design, though. In particular, the cockpit is a lot narrower on this version, which for such a small change kind of throws the aesthetic off. The details around it are squeezed in further, which helps a bit, but it still looks a little wonky. Nothing I can't get used to, though. Plus, there are some extra details added to the... I'm gonna go with nose of the car. I can't exactly tell what they're supposed to represent, but it does give you a little bit extra to look at, though some of the extra transformation bits kind of break up the front wing. The paint deco unfortunately leaves a bit to be desired. The striped deco on the front is there, as well as the chevrons on the back, but the rear engine section is completely unpainted. It's supposed to be gold, with blue accents and red trim on the fins. What makes this worse is that the nose pieces are cast in white plastic and then painted over in red and black. I think if they had just been cast in those colors, they would have been able to use those paint masks for the engine. But I guess they ran out of room on the molds, I don't know. Also, fun fact, this is the first Transformer I've seen to leave the headlights unpainted. Not a deal breaker, but still a bit disappointing. All 4 wheels are pinned into place, so the car rolls very nicely. The tires are even textured, so not only do they have good traction, but they make a fun noise when you roll them. The rear fins are also on hinges with soft detenting, so you can have them pointing straight up into the air or lying flat against the car body. So you actually get a bit of display option, which is always a good thing. You also get 4 blast effect pegs on the back of the vehicle, so you can get some fiery exhaust going if you have the pieces for it. Size-wise, the vehicle is 5 3/4 inches in length, 2 3/4 inches wide at the widest, and just shy of 2 inches tall. Next to see each side swipe, we can see that she's a little bit bigger in footprint, but quite a bit taller. Compared to the original Override toy, however, this is about 10% smaller all around. Seems a little odd when you consider that the original toy was so much cheaper, but we'll get to that. Could the vehicle be better? Sure, but I still think it does a great job of capturing the original design. I find that Override is easier to transform if you deviate from the order of steps in the instructions. I like to start by unpegging the arms from the underside and unhinging the rear fenders. You have to flex the plastic a bit to get the fenders untabbed, but not egregiously. The arms then split and fold out to the sides, standard stuff. From here you have plenty of clearance to untab the windshield and swing the entire front end down. The front end splits, and then the 2 halves unfold on a really long double hinge to form the legs. It's an interesting way to work in a leg extension, but it keeps them spread out enough for vehicle mode, and everything locks together securely. The feet are a little weird to transform, mainly because you have to start folding up the nose halves to give them clearance, but once they're out, everything tucks up nicely behind the legs. The lower body then swings down the rest of the way, and then the cockpit folds down over it to reveal the head. Now for the final trick, the rear fender pieces swing up and slide in to form the sides of the torso. This is a little awkward because there's very little clearance for the pinhead, and also because there are tabs going in 2 separate directions. But if you can get it lined up and maneuver the shoulder hinges just right, everything fits together solidly. It's a very inventive transformation scheme, with a lot of moving parts and a really satisfying payoff. In robot mode, Override more than makes up for the oddities of her vehicle mode by being a near flawless representation of her animation model. It's a very unique design for a Transformer too. The exhaust pipe drapings on her arms give her a regal look, befitting the leader of a planet, and I don't know of any other Transformer that puts the wheels on this sort of angle with the legs. The blocky torso definitely keeps things familiar, but it feels like a different breed of Transformer. Which it is, so it does its job well. The head is undeniably Nitro Convoy, and I mean that very specifically. Unlike the American release of the original toy, this figure has the anime-accurate gold face. It's a nice shade, too. It stands out even against the gold paint on the rest of the figure, just like the original did. I like how she has a chin strap too. It's a subtle touch that adds to the racer vibe. Putting her next to the original Cybertron toy, it's a night and day difference. The torso is slimmed down, the arms are bulked up, even the backpack is a little more subdued. Looking at them side by side like this really emphasizes how much the original toy suffers for its auto-transformation gimmick. It's actually kind of depressing. Override was a major character in the show. In fact, she was introduced as the leader of Velocitron, so it's kind of insane that it took this long to get a good representation of her. Override also gains a lot of articulation over her original toy. The neck is on a ball joint, but it can't really look up at all due to the shape of the head, and you can't even get 90 degrees of rotation either way before the chin strap starts clashing with things. The shoulders have full universal motion, the biceps swivel, the elbows bend to 90 degrees, and the wrists can swivel. She has a waist rotation, but it doesn't turn very well due to the backpack. The hips are universal, the thighs rotate, knees bend past 90, and the feet have 2 axes of tilt. The figure only comes with one accessory in the form of her engine blaster, which stores on the back of the robot. Side note, I like how the nose of the car is molded in underneath the engine. Nice little throwback, even if it is technically a faux part. The barrels now fold out manually, no spring deployment, but at least this way there's no chance of a misfire when the figure wears out. The weapon is much narrower in proportion than the one on the original toy, which makes it more show accurate and, in my opinion, a lot more elegant. It also has a 5mm port on top, amusingly in the same spot where the original weapon had a port for the nose to attach to, so you can combine it with other weapons. And the coolest part? There is a slot in the back of the gun where you can insert a cyber key. No key is included, but it's specifically shaped to accommodate the original keys from Cybertron. It doesn't lock in, however, or even form a friction fit, so it can be jostled free or fall out if you hold it wrong. But in most static poses, it holds in place well enough. Override can, of course, hold her blaster, or you can mount it on her forearms if you'd rather have hands-free blasting. Unfortunately, you can't flip the barrels out in car mode like the original toy. The hinge points are in the wrong spots. She also has 5mm ports on the sides of her knees and the backs of her shoulders, but they're only really useful for mounting other figures' weapons, since there isn't any clearance for her engine blaster at those points. Override stands at almost exactly 6 inches tall. This puts her around an inch taller than Earthrise Sunstreaker, and by extension, most current deluxe cars. And unlike in vehicle mode, she's actually a 1/4 inch taller at the head than her original toy. Next to a Voyager-class toy like Siege Prime, though, she's about a 1/2 inch shorter. Which I guess brings me to the elephant in the room, price. This figure was sold at a Voyager price point despite not being the size of one. Now, this isn't exactly unique to Override. Over in the Studio Series line, we have figures like 86 Hot Rod and Ironhide who do the same thing, selling deluxe-sized figures as Voyagers so they have more budget for engineering or accessories. But the designers also admitted to a lot of cost-cutting when designing this figure. Where a standard Voyager toy would be made using 12 molds, this figure was only made with 4, one for each color of plastic. The toy does not feel cheaply made, I want to stress that, but it was made very cheaply, yet still sold for full Voyager price. Here's the thing though. This figure would not have been possible at a deluxe price point. Keep in mind, this was a store exclusive, which meant they had a lot less budget to work with simply by virtue of a smaller market. That's why most store exclusives are redecos. The design work and mold tooling is already done, and that's the most expensive part of toy production, so a redeco can be made on an exclusive budget with no issue. A completely new mold figure like Override is a completely different story. Making this figure with the minimum number of molds and selling it at a Voyager price point was a necessity if they wanted to get this figure made. Now, maybe you understand that, but still don't think the figure is worth the $35 MSRP, and that is totally fair. In fact, I will confess that I bought this figure on clearance for $25, so basically at deluxe price. But I want people to understand that this was not a decision born out of corporate greed. If they were just looking to pinch a penny, they would have just made this a remold of Hot Rod like they had planned. Instead, the designers worked within their limitations to give us something truly special. I cannot understate how happy I am that this toy exists. It isn't quite perfect, could use a bit more paint, and the vehicle is a little bit compromised. But this figure still manages to brilliantly capture everything about Cybertron Override with modern design sensibilities. The robot mode looks spot on to the animation model, and the transformation is a lot of fun. It's a great figure to mess around with, or to keep on a display. And she really does fit well into a Cybertron display. If you can find this figure for a decent price, I would highly recommend picking her up, especially if you're a fan of Cybertron.